Hi everybody, welcome back. So, as mentioned earlier, media time isn't just time passing. It's time shaped by media. It's time objectified, externalized, and experienced differently than by our own internal clocks. A lot happens in this gap between. Today, I'm joined in conversation by two artists, Dorian Shishko and Alberto Harris, and I would love to ask them to join me on stage. And we're going to be exploring how media and technology manipulate time in unique ways. In this panel discussion, we'll first be looking at the notion of decay, opposed to capitalist innovation. And in the second part, we'll be exploring the subversive power of inefficiency and decay. And also coming up is an interactive intervention by Mario Santamaria. Stay tuned. So, yeah. Sure. Let's embrace inefficiency. Yes. All right, so let's do some introductions where introductions are due. Alberto Harris is a Brazilian artist and software developer based in Germany. His work navigates the intersection of art, technology, and language, often centering on the creation of archives as an artistic practice. Recently, he's been exploring the poetic and political dimension of archives, not as static repositories, but as dynamic, interpretative spaces. At Pixxelpoint, Alberto is showing project Arche Scriptures, where he used locally sourced clay to create a fictional excavation site that reimagines digital storage as an ancient medium. The installation presents a ceramic tablet inscribed with intricate markings, which an automated machine continually decodes. This speculative artifact bridges past and future, using physical materials to bring digital histories to life. And I'm also welcoming Dorian Shishko, a Slovenian artist and graphic designer who explores speculative, critical, and transmedial dimensions of visual culture and technology. With a background in graphic design and a significant role in art collectives Fresh Trash and Nimaš Izbira, Dorian's work has also been exhibited internationally. And at Pixxelpoint, Dorian presents project The Core, a video game installation that places players in an abstract labyrinth where they navigate speculative futures. Entering through a crystal ball interface, players encounter a labyrinthine world, with each turn leading to different paths and forking visions of what's to come. So, and finally, halfway through our program, we also experience an interactive intervention by Mario Santamaria, a Barcelona-based artist whose work explores technologies of vision, mediation, and the entanglements of digital and physical spaces. Mario's project, Visions from the Fall, part of the Pixxelpoint exhibition, documents a digital avatar's fall, a descent that plays out over billions of years. So yeah, maybe a small round of applause for our guests tonight. Thanks so much for joining me. So I would maybe just start with the fact that sort of I've kind of observed that time seems to be like a significant theme in both of your practices, whether it's sort of the speculative deep time in the core, like the notion of sort of experiencing time differently than maybe we're used to in this digital space, and at the same time your sort of ancestral futuristic perspectives of sort of the more physical digital translation in Arche Scripture. So I'm just curious, like, how you use or see time like as a medium or maybe narrative in your work. Feel free to bite off whichever part of the question feels relevant.
It's interesting that we kind of talking about time, because I'm not in my work I'm never aware as time as a concept. I'm always thinking about like the future, and you know, when you think about it, the future is like very connected with time, and is the future time. But in that kind of sense, I'm interested in time and the passing of time, but it always seems that like the future is some far away concept that never arrives. So that's why I think it's interesting that like speculative design kind of tries to catch the future in a different way that like normal, like, I don't know, science fiction or this kind of pop culture references do. So that's why I'm like interested in this kind of more alternative visions of time or the future. So maybe that's also more prevalent in my like aesthetics in that way, that I'm not interested in like more classical representation of robots or sci-fi or concepts like that, or technology. I'm more like interested in this kind of more abstract, blob-like, naive representations of more conceptual futures. In that way, I don't think that the future will be, you know, shiny and metallic, or, you know, mechanical. Maybe it will be not a non-formal in that non-formalistic in that way. You know, maybe it will be very psychedelic, as we talked before when we watched when we played my video game. But I was also thinking, hopefully I'm not too long now. I was also thinking that video games as a medium is an interesting medium regarding time, because the player's time involved in the video game is unique to every player, in that way that also if he plays like a linear game, which is like more like an interactive movie, it's always like his time with the game is very unique and represented to his own emotions. In movies or many theater, we can also say that, but also his didactic motion to the game, his input is always different. In the movies, we always see the same thing, but in the video game, it's always gonna be different. Even if the game is like very linear, even if you just press space, you're never gonna press space at the same time. So that's why I think it's interesting to kind of conceive the player as, he's the player of his own reality in that way. So that's why I think video games, in my practice, I like the medium video games so much, because it's really this unique experience. You're like involved in your own theater play or movie. You're the protagonist. You're empathic to yourself as a player. So that's why I'm maybe in this aspect interested as like a medium of video games regarding time.
Yeah, hello everyone. Thank you for having me here. Yeah, time. In relation to video game in the world of installation, where in my case where there's a machine performing something, there is time serves almost as a way to create this dialogue to the viewer, because I could have shown this piece of ceramic still simply, but I find interesting to create this dynamic of time so that there is a dialogue, and then the audience can understand what's behind, because everything that I did could be described in a text and as a research and shown in with no time, but with this machine, it's kind of like a performatic machine that helps the viewer or the user, perhaps, or the player in the case of a game, to navigate through this concept and have this time to see to go with it. But in a more broad sense of time, when you mentioned ancestral futurism, this is a concept that I take from Fabi Borges. She's a Brazilian researcher, and she does many different things, but she has this text about ancestral futurism, where I took this term. I think she coined this term, but I'm not so sure. I think yes. And she proposes this term thinking of this idea of futurism came in a time where in the modernists, when technology promised a lot, progress would come through technology and it would get better and better. But what we got from this since then is a climate catastrophe incoming, and this future never arrived. So she proposes this ancestral futurism since this future never arrived and doesn't seem like it will ever arrive. Perhaps we have to look to the past, but not really to the past, but to the communities that didn't share this necessarily this idea of future. And then she has a more like techno-shamanistic approach where she, as many people in Brazil, it's not so much my case, but she goes to the originary populations in the case of Brazil, but in the Americas in general, to think of communities that were thinking of different paradigms of time as well. And that's what interests me of using ceramics as a medium. So instead of trying to think of this future by simply following the roots that is being promised as a future, also go back in the past. But it's not really the past because ceramics is still a medium. It didn't die. So it's past in connection to what people think the future should be, but it's actually just another form of present. And yeah, that's one of the main things I'm interested in this project. But in relation to time, just a third point, I was discussing with Maya about this when I was doing the research, because I used the Slovenian alphabet of a particular time of history and of 19th century, if I'm not mistaken. So it was a very particular time when this national identity was being formed. And the border that I'm drawing is yet a border of a different time. So there is this, if you think, there is maybe some, I could have perhaps, and the satellite image is the current satellite images of 2022 or 2023. So all these things, they don't really match so much. But I thought, okay, maybe that's also interesting that these things don't necessarily match. But yeah, that's something that she pointed out that I thought it was interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, no, super. Oh, that was loud. Super interesting. Thank you so much. I think what really struck me was how, like, indeed, like, we live in this sort of hyper, accelerating world where technological innovation promised this sort of very accelerated, like, forward-driven now, which is really short. Like, as soon as you're part of the now, the new iPhone has been released, or like the new sort of thing has been released that makes you feel like you're already lagging behind. And I think I found it very striking how both of your works sort of very much undermine this idea of like efficiency, because, for example, in your case, Alberto, like the process I've imagined to have your, the clay shipped, to produce it, to print it, to read these clay tablets is like a way of storing information. It's inefficient in a way that I think also creates a lot of space for time to flow differently. And I also, if I understand well, a part of your installation is that each time the border is sort of red, there might be a chance for error or like misinterpretation. So also over time, sort of, it's literally redrawing another future. And I think in your case, Dorian, then there's this idea of sort of leaving your usual way of maybe playing video games. Like, you also could have shown your work on an iPad, say, or on another sort of controller that might be very easy to use. You instead place it in this sort of crystal ball, which is maybe tedious, but I think opens up a lot of different sort of spaces. So I may be, just a bit curious about like your motivation to like frame your project in that way. So for you to display it in the format you did, and for you, Alberto, also to sort of to juxtapose this reading and writing with sort of the border display. If you could maybe talk a bit more about what drove you to that sort of specific presentation that we saw here at Pixxelpoint.
Yeah, I guess the main you know, thinking about that is always like, oh, the future is so disappointing. You arrive at the future, we are here, and then, you know, we have self-driving cars, but they, you know, they do not work. They just beep the whole night at the parking lot, and you keep you awake instead of, you know, giving you, I don't know, endless support and transportation. And in that way, maybe it's interesting to see technology as something more mystical and something more hidden. And I think we also, as like a society, have a notion towards that. That's why I think we also now embrace kind of this retro technological aspect of consumerist technology. Oh, we love the retro Game Boys are coming back, and the Dreamcast, and people are, you know, playing this kind of old school aesthetic video game consoles, and also they're bringing back, you know, you shown before the Frutiger era background, and this is kind of the old aesthetic that we're like nostalgically seeing as like a prediction towards the future we kind of wanted, but it didn't come true. That's why maybe I also wanted to create something tactile that kind of represents something maybe from my past, but something that could be present in the future. People were like, oh, this ball is very interesting. I would love to play games like that, because playing games on a touchpad is sometimes very not self-fulfilling. It's very like, oh, I'm just there, you know. Just like TikTok is like a video game also, like just scrolling and sliding and stuff like that. So maybe that's why I wanted to create this kind of different experimental controller, so people are then more aware about what they're doing, more tactile, more physical, and also this mystical element of this crystal ball foretelling the future is, I also think, kind of an interesting concept. You come into this gallery space and you see this ball, and pick it up, and it's kind of, oh, where am I, in which kind of this labyrinth of different possible speculative perceptions of time. So yeah, this is kind of my notion towards this kind of, I guess, technological aspect of using this kind of more decoded version of perception. And also, I think in like gallery spaces, like I'm very interested in video game art, and video game art is as like an artistic medium, also in installations and exhibitions. And there can be a problem when you just have a controller, and maybe older people and people who are not known to the to this kind of way of playing games don't know what to do. They just they have this PlayStation 4 controller, and it's very complicated, have million buttons. You only need two to exercise to use it at your video game. So it can be a very kind of frustrating experience. Also, I think with VR and VR art can be a problem. It can be a very antisocial experience. You're stuck in this VR world, and some kind of technician is coming and helping you give this VR headset on your head, and you're not very comfortable, and somebody has used it before. It's a little bit sweaty, and then it can be very, not so fun. So maybe this is it.
I think it's about magic somehow. The sphere of using it. I think the sound. Hello or no? Okay. Okay. It has to do with this idea of creating the magical somehow, and this. How can I say? Yeah, the ceramic brings this. It has a presence. Materials has a presence. Shape, in this case of a sphere, it has a connotation to it, and it has a weight. It's not just seems that many technologies want to hide themselves as an object and just bring you to this virtual space and forget about the presence of the object itself. And I think usually in cultures you have the importance of objects the history of objects that the path that they take. Where did you got this object? How like the history that it has as well, the perspective that objects have towards us, and maybe this idea of this discardable devices, and it's very, it's a way disregarding the perspective of objects, where they are just windows, you know, they're not things, they're not entities somehow, even though that they almost think and say and do all these things, but we don't acknowledge them at all. So, yeah, and I think bringing these things, materializing them in different ways, is a way to bring some, attention to things as materials, as things as they are. So, maybe that's how it connects. And ceramics for me, it became, now I'm doing many projects with, I did some different projects with clay already, and I just like this idea of being the very crude, it's one of the earliest technologies and one of the most universal technologies, actually, clay. And for me, it's very interesting to go back to this process, which is very accessible. You only need clay, and you can harvest clay yourself. It's very easy, and you also to fire it. I mean, in my case, I use laser engraving, which, yeah, it's a paradox to this, but which also interests me, this contrast, because, yeah.
Thank you so much. I wish we had much more time to discuss this time-related matters. So thank you so much. This concludes kind of our first part, dealing with sort of this idea of a forward-driven, effective way of passing time and how to intervene there. I would like to welcome Mario on stage, who will give us a 5-minute interactive intervention. So stay tuned and stay present. You can join us next to the room.
Thank you.
This is the QR code. Okay. Let me just. I think that's fine. Yeah, it's just water. Just normal, without coordinates. Okay. Like this. Yeah. Okay. Take it away.
Hello. Okay. This is a metaverse website, voxels.com, and looks like that. You know, everybody knows this kind of metaverse is like a shopping center with crypto things, no? And you can walk. If you press C, you change the point of view. Whoa, teleport, no. Okay, if you press F, you can fly. If you press F again, you fall. You can see when we are up, change this escape, and we can change this number, and it's our position in vertical. And we can go wherever we want in the sky, like that. We press F and we are falling. Oh. We don't see.
Oh yeah, we're falling. I see the coordinates.
No, we can see the numbers, no? How they change. Okay, the idea is now maybe we can do some experiment and we can go everybody to this metaverse. We can use the mobile here, and at home we can. Okay, we have a meeting point in this metaverse, and the idea is like a collective suicide, something like that, but virtual. You know, it's not real. Don't call the police, please. And okay, the place. Where is the meeting point? For mobiles?
Oh, yes, so it was
Of
like this?
no, but it's more easy.
The QR code? Yeah.
Yeah, this you can see. This is for mobile phone. With computer, it's more fun, but bigger. But you have to wait in that point because the idea is go everybody to the same place and we can see each other falling, you know. And I never try, you know. It's an experiment. Okay. And if you are using your computer, how to go to the browser again?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And
Oh, technical problem. Oh. So, or now we're on the right.
okay, and at home, okay, we go to voxels.com and we find a button is enter, play, something like that. And we have to start to fly a bit, you know, and stop, escape, and change the number, and is the position, the meeting point is 7654321. Or is with 0 or without 0? I don't remember now. Okay, with 0, without. And press enter. Okay, and click in the image. I'm alone. I can see you. Maybe you are in different places. No, I saw one person there. This is not mine. This is not me. No?
I think I'm also maybe.
Okay. At 3, we press F and we fall together. Okay? And you know, if you press C, you change the point of view, and you can see your body also in this glitch. And okay, at 3. 3, no. 1, 2, 3. No, if also maybe I can disappear with that. Like.
Wow. Love it. Thank you so much. Thank you. Wow. I am mesmerized. Cool. So, well, thank you so much, Mario. So, I think this is a really good entry point for exactly what sort of kind of disrupting this linear logic in sort of kind of, in this case, the digital space, but there are so many ways, I think, to challenge or do otherwise or act against like the expected way of being oriented in time and space as like a player, as a subject. And I think this can also be a deeply political move. Like there's not this is not the official way of playing this game, I'm quite sure. And yet it opens up a lot of thoughts and questions. So I think that sort of glitches and errors are most usually seen as like disruptions, kind of to the usual order of things. And I think in Mario's case, but also in your work, Dorian, and your work, Alberto, they're, I think, also almost like part of the integral work. And I think, Alberto, maybe I want to return to this moment of glitching in your own work, where each time the machine redraws the border or sees the border differently, and we end up with a sort of multiplicity or a collection, an archive of like paths not taken or taken in different ways. And I'm curious sort of how you worked with these imperfections to create like an opening for new interpretations or possibilities, and what your process of discovery was with that, maybe. Yeah, if you have any thoughts on or reflections on your piece.
Yeah, I have many thoughts about these glitches because they happen in many different ways. As I said when we were doing the guided tour, when I talk with Micha about Micha's his works or runs, I don't know, Carinarnica, he participates, and we talked. Maya introduced us, so we talked about projects that already had happened in the space, which was the previous customs office to the border, and there I decided to work with the border, but of course to work with the border as data is something quite there's a fine line between reinforcing the idea of this border by engraving it in ceramics. So why would I want to perpetuate this idea of border? That's not what I was looking for. That's not also what this space proposes. So, but I knew that this challenge of engraving this this data into ceramics was not going to be 100% successful. So the glitch was kind of part of, it was a necessity to the concept, because if it was a perfect medium, just reading the border and drawing the border as it is today, and making it into a medium that could last for a long time, it's almost like reinforcing this idea when that was not the purpose of of this research. So in a way, I made the engraving system. I mean, the ceramic plates, it was a bit tricky because the clay came from Slovenia, and it was not like a clay that's the best, that's like the most appropriate for like just sculpturing, just the clay for tiles. And so it was really difficult to make it into that shape, and then it bent when it dried, even though I have and so on. I'm sure professional ceramists wouldn't make the mistakes I did, but yeah, the ceramics bent, and that creates a problem in engraving. That creates also a problem in reading, and then also and then the lighting, the change of light also influences things, and then the ceramic itself has some impurities that when it burned, some parts of it were white, so there was some kind of I don't know the name in English, other materials mixed with the clay that the laser could not engrave on. So the material carried, its own history, its own condition that was not designed for what I was doing, but in the end, it was designed for what I wanted to reach, which was an imperfect medium, because I thought it was going to be interesting. Because glitches, the nature of glitches on digital, because the digital information is so fragile that if you change one little piece, the whole thing can be corrupt. And that's what glitches are so interesting, because sometimes you change one little piece of the information, and the whole thing switches, and the whole thing changes purpose. And so when a ceramics has a one little crack or one little thing, and then one number goes wrong in the latitude and longitude, if one number is wrong, then you're on the other side of the world. So, and I knew this would happen, and I thought that it would be interesting to kind of, like to have this border. I don't know really what it means to have this border, like going to all over the world. Like I don't know what that could mean. But it's just for me, it's interesting, this absurdity of that a border perhaps could look like that, and just also it just maybe a way to make it clear that the border is just an abstract information that is not is not a natural thing. The border is just an idea that's just being passed on, but as a memory, as information, it's just a very fragile information, actually. And it was interesting because I went this whole thing started because I was in Google Earth, and I realized on Google Earth, you can test this on the Google Earth desktop app. You can, if you zoom in really closely to the border, you see that the lines don't really fit, and there are some cracks in the lines, which that's what inspired me to do this the way I did it. And then I went to and then I was, okay, where does this border data comes from? And I found a treaty. There's a treaty between Italy and Slovenia that describes the border, and it's like very interesting language, like from this intersection 5 meters to this thing. So it's like there's like a language which tries to remove any ambiguity, but it's not latitude and longitude, which I thought it was interesting. I thought this would be declared in a different way. So I'm just interested in this, thinking of border as information and trying to question it through making it onto a imperfect medium. Yeah. And another thing which also is that the material itself, the clay, is if you see the map, because also checking the geographical maps of the terrain, and these things there are no borders of these things. So the clay that is present there is not a Slovenian clay. It's just the clay that's from this region, but it's gonna be basically the same material or almost the same at the other side of the border. This material has no nationality or and I thought that was also the point of it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it's really fascinating what you say about like the border being like a description of data points in a sense, and also like a social construct, and how the border kind of connects space over time, and it changes, it's open to negotiation. And I think your project really, for me at least, it invited a lot of reflection into like what it means to draw a line, what it means to divide things in here and there. And I think in a bit of a related sort of note, like in your game, Dorian, like normally we play video games where you're very driven towards an end, like you level up, you have scores, there's this constant monitoring of like progress. And I couldn't help but sort of wonder in your game when I played through it, that it kind of completely shatters this idea of like reaching the end. Or of course there is some sort of progress and evolution, but I also remember you said that maybe in the original implementation there would even be like a more sort of non-linear progression, or you imagined like a very different way of inhabiting this video game space. And I'm just curious a bit sort of if you have any more thoughts on that, how the sort of progression of time and leveling up of progress in this piece or in your work has been for you.
Maybe it's interesting that in like classical video games you have like this term like walking simulator, which is like this kind of more negative term towards more experimental indie games who just kind of tell you a narrative through walking more like an atmospheric world. So maybe I think sometimes my games are like walking simulators, but they kind of want to convey you a message through the path. So that's why the path is sometimes very hidden, also sometimes kind of glitchy, sometimes intentionally, sometimes not, you know. But that is kind of the process of intermediate art. Can be very glitchy, but I'm very interested in like conveying narrative through world building. Like I think art can be very interesting, like in that way that it doesn't tell you a story directly, like more experimental art, I guess, more intermediate art and more like contemporary art, that it tells you a story through atmosphere. And maybe, you know, some players played the game and, you know, just maybe some older players, they just went and picked up the, yesterday there was like an older woman and she picked up the sphere, and she was just walking around the lobby, and I didn't tell her exactly how to play the game, but she was like, oh, it's very good. It's this, she didn't come to the end, but she kind of loved the vibe and this experience of this. Oh, and it's connected to this and this, and I didn't have time to, you know, do the walkthrough with her because talking with everybody, and you know, her experience was still valid, I guess, even if she didn't go to the end. And I think this is also a valid experience. You know, it's like that you know, joke that, you know, you're playing video games with your older brother, and he gives you a you know, joystick which isn't plugged in. You know, you think you're playing the game, and it's not important that you're playing the game. The experience in this is important, I guess. The story that you get in your head, even if it's like 2 pixels running around the screen. So what was the question actually?
I think your answer matters more than the question, maybe. But indeed, I think it was really about this sort of idea of linearity in playing video games, and also I think when you mentioned that sort of users have very different reactions, even maybe to your imaginations, for me I think that adds to this sort of poetic moment of really encountering these works in like a space, like a gallery space. Because I also, for example, working as a web developer or in sort of user experience, that you're always sort of, you're predicting what kind of users would use your products, and you're designing with like an imagined user in mind, and then there is no space for like users to be different than what you imagine. So I imagine that also presenting this work in a space where people of different sort of demographics, skill levels, dexterity levels use it, it also, I think, even for me, that even maybe strengthens the point you're trying to like bring across of embracing like glitchiness and inefficiency as a way of really orienting ourselves or reorienting ourselves. So I'm afraid that time is maybe, I think maybe it's a good moment to sort of round off this chat and transition to our conclusion. So I would really like to thank you so much again for joining me here. Thank you so much. And yeah, if you haven't seen Alberto and Dorian's work yet, please do. I think you will, you're in for a good time. So yeah, thank you so much. Maybe a round of applause. So yeah, maybe handing. Yeah. Handing.
Thank you. Okay, so as you step back into your own worlds tonight, we invite you to notice the subtleties of the infrastructural shifts we touched on, whether they're in the news, hidden in your search results, or right there on the street. Art spaces like this let us push boundaries and experiment, but there are many instances of spatial augmentation within the technosocial architectures you maneuver. Everyday spaces hold their own signs of change, of structures bending and reshaping. Keep your senses open, because these shifts, these decompositions and augmentations of our spaces disrupt business as usual, loosen social relations, and carve openings towards what might be possible.
And decay, in many ways, flips our ideas of technological progress and innovation. It's not a linear path, but a twisting, unpredictable force that disrupts, resists, and reshapes in the process. The thing about decay is that it cannot be neatly predicted, and it can only be kind of witnessed in real time as it unfolds. And in the same way, like erosion does not halt or stay within neat boundaries. If we only notice it, it helps us orient ourselves differently. So I think that really letting ourselves look, I hope that for all of us here at Pixxelpoint, we acknowledge that letting ourselves look beyond like business as usual and attending to these fleeting moments of glitching and sort of at the same time witnessing the geologically long pace of decay. I hope that really helps us see that like a different, less productive world is running right inside our own. And back to you.
Okay, yes, and this is kind of our last round of thank yous now. So thank you for joining us here tonight. Thank you to all of our participants. So Omsk Social Club, Room 69, Vitko Priushek, Masana Gofo, Alberto Jerez, Dorian Shishko, and Mario Santamaria. So again, if you haven't already, go check out their work across different spaces, times, and cross-boundary interventions of Pixxelpoint 2024. We would like to, deeply thank our good friends Tommaso and Jordi from Amsterdam and their incredible initiative of this pop-up hybrid studio, The Void, whose work and platform is so essential in providing alternative media narratives. And last but not least, we extend our appreciation and gratitude to the great, the generous, and the fabulous Janez Janša and Marcela Ukritic of Aksioma for facilitating all of these wonderful situations for all of us. Again, thank you to every single one of you for joining us tonight. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So coming up next on our evening program, drinks on drinks, a DJ set, and a dance floor. Join us tomorrow for the second episode of The Void, called Intensity and the Conditions of Expression, curated by Max Valencic and Jan Kostaniewicz, taking place in the bookstore Café Max at 3 o'clock sharp. We were your presenters tonight, Clara de Beliac, Dominik Vrabic-Dejman, and we look forward... And we truly do look forward to new possibilities of expansion, communion, and decay the future brings as we accelerate into the void. Thank you again. And there's going to be a bit of a time gap now, a bit of a glitch to set up for the DJ set. So feel free to proceed with business as usual.